project is going to be a tide clock for the condo. We already have a tide clock there, but it's like a little bitty one, and then we have a regular clock. So I was thinking people when they're on vacation, they need to be looking at a regular clock that has the time. They need to be looking at just a tide clock that says when it's high tide, low tide. So those things, when I first saw them, I didn't even think they were real, because the tides don't run in a 24-hour cycle. It's like every 6.5 hours, and it's not exactly 6.5 hours, but this one you'll set to about whatever the standard is. It changes a little bit based on the time of the day and the surroundings. I don't know exactly how it works, but it's about 6.5 hours. There's every tide, so it's a little bit longer than the regular clock. But I have a movement for it. I'm just gonna make the base body of it. That's the next thing.
So I don't want to sound like I don't understand the how the tides work, how the timing works. So let me explain it a little better. I said I don't understand exactly, but that's because there's like so many different factors. But the primary factors are the cycles of the moon, right? The moon orbits the Earth in 27 days, 27 to 28 days. And also the Earth is spinning on its axis once every 24 hours. So we see the sun rise and set every 24 hours, but the moon we see rise and set in a little bit longer time than 24 hours, because it's also orbiting the Earth in the direction that extends the time that it takes for a daily cycle. And the tides are controlled by the moon primarily, and the sun a little bit. So as the moon is orbiting the Earth, right, it goes through the cycles. As when it's on the sun side of the Earth, it's you can't see it at all. It's a new moon. When it's on the side of the Earth opposite from the sun, it's a full moon. And when the tide is on the full moon side, then you've got the Earth, the moon, and the sun in alignment, and that kind of extends the tide. Same thing as the new moon side. It makes the gravity pull even stronger. So there's those factors are the primary factors, but there's also other factors that go into it, and that's why it's not exactly whatever the day divided by 27 times, add the 24 hours divided by 27 times, add that on to the 24-hour cycle of the standard Earth. That's why you get the about 6.5, a little bit less than 6.5 hour cycle for the tides. But that's the primary, and there's other factors also. That's what I was saying I don't understand exactly. I pretty much understand the whole basic moon, sun, gravity cycle, but there's other things that I'm not sure exactly why. When you look at the tide apps, it always shows within a few minutes different than what if you just calculated the exact time to be consistent, the same over and over. So that's all I was saying with that. Just that it's not that I don't understand it, I just don't fully understand every piece.
And I say, they have these wire brushes with the bristles that stick out the side. You could just buy one. But the store's way over there, and this one's right here. It only takes a minute. It's not like I'm using this original one for anything. So, just modify it. One of these days, I'll go to the store and buy one of these.
Maybe the name of this channel should be how to use tools that are not quite precisely the right thing to get the job done.
Know me, I'm always safety first.
Okay, a little bit more about the design of this tide clock. You probably saw the picture in the thumbnail, so you know what the thing is going to look like in the end. But when I was starting it here, I really didn't have exactly a plan. I kind of had a basic idea that I wanted it to have that beach in the middle with high tide having a lot of water on the top and low tide having a little bit of water on the bottom. And I wanted that water to be made out of the epoxy resin, and I wanted the beach to be made out of actual sand. I didn't get the sand from the beach because it's got all kinds of critters and stuff in it, and I didn't want to get some like crittery water or crittery beach sand to put on there. I just wanted to get some regular play sand. But this stuff that I'm doing here is just the outer part, the outer ring that's going to have the high tide, low tide words on it, and that's going to end up trying to be that rustic look. So I just had to get the basic grain to look like it was old, and that's why I was using the fire and using the wire brush to try to break down the grain a little bit, get the softer parts scraped away. And then I was going to use the paint and use the scraper to scrape some paint off and write the words high tide and low tide on it. And I just wanted a foundation for where I was going to make the actual tide clock part of it, the resin part and the sandy part. So this part is just to get the foundation and to get the outer edge to look what the basic part of it is going to look like.
Alright, here's the next stage. I'm going to show it to you. So just the outer ring on this is going to be exposed to the clock. The whole middle part, or the tide clock, yeah, I guess it's still a clock. The whole middle part is going to be something different. And even this isn't going to be all, it's just going to have some paint over it to make it look like the old paint type of, has the stained board with the paint kind of chipping off of it. The old rusty looking thing. We'll probably put a little bit of stain on that and then
Okay, so for gluing all these pieces together that I just kind of ground up, the best way to do that would have been to have a couple clamps, take the cutoffs from the rounded edge, put them on there, clamp it all together. But I don't have any bar clamps, so I just used this method. I just screwed some screws into a board that basically fits the size of that round thing, and then I glued it up, stuck the pieces back together, and then put some little shims in between the screws and the boards to make it nice and tight. And so I saved some money. I've never bought clamps because this method is just so simple and it works pretty well every time. Anytime I've had to glue boards together, this method has worked really well.
Okay, that's it for now on that, guys. We'll do some more later. Alright, it's not all the way dry yet. The glue, this one's way high, and I have to sand that one down quite a bit. But the glue's not all the way dry, so I'm not going to take it apart yet. I'm going to make a piece to put on the backside that's going to like hold all this together a little bit better. And what I did is I just found the center hole. I'm just going to make this just a little bit smaller than the circle. I'll just do a little bit smaller hole, a little bit smaller circle. Cut that one out. glue that to the back side. And that will help to hold all this together because there's so many little pieces it's going to fall apart.
This material that I used here that I'm cutting up worked really good for the backside. It held everything together nicely. It cut really easily. And as easily as it cut, I should have known that this is just basically cardboard. But it was the stuff from like the back of an old bookshelf. So I figured it was like a kind of maybe a super thin masonite. But it was not super thin masonite. It was cardboard. And that kind of ended up costing me a little bit of effort and time later on when I tried to put the front part on. And you'll see that I got it all put on there and then glued it all on, and it didn't really work out real well. It worked out on the back. So if you guys are making one of these tide clocks, make sure you use something besides cardboard on the front when you're building up your plaster base. And here, this is a little montage of cleaning up my shop. I have to do this every single time that I do a project in there because I have to fit the car in there. But it's kind of fun. I have it set up to where it cleans up nice and quickly and easily. And I love doing it now. At first it was kind of a pain, but now it's like my shop is always clean. My garage is always clean because it has to be. Except for last night, I forgot to put the car in there.
All right. That's how I have to get it ready every single time, or else I can't park the car in here. And I have to park the car in here because I only have no parking pass on one car.
I am imperfect and forget to park the car in there every once in a while. I've done it 3 times. Haven't got a ticket yet, so I'm lucky so far. And now I've flipped it over to the front side, and I'm trying to flatten this out. I had a couple spots where the boards were sticking up quite a bit, and I wanted to flatten that out a little bit. Chiseled some of it off and sanded the rest of it a little bit flat just to make it better foundational size. It doesn't matter like if I'm messing up the sides at all. I still got a lot of work to do on those sides. I'm just trying to get a flat surface to put the tide clock picture part on. And there you can see I'm showing it. It's nice and flat, or mostly flat. And then gluing that piece on there was the next step. Oh, finding the middle hole exactly and then gluing it on there. With another example of not having all the right tools. I didn't have enough glue, but close enough. It works with what I got, as always.
So ran out of wood glue almost. It was like that much in the bottom. But I had all this glue in the inside. And I just, instead of going to the store, just to hold this back together. There's going to be a lot more holding it together than just the glue, so be fine with just this.
It's not that I don't like going to the store. Just when I'm in the middle of a project, I don't want to stop and go to the store every time because often I'm not having all the right stuff, and I don't want to go to the store, get the right stuff, and then come back, and then 20 minutes later I find out, oh, I needed this thing too, and go to the store again. So I just kind of work with what I have. That's why I said we should just change the name of this channel to something regarding that, like doing a bunch of work with only 50% of the exact proper tools that you should have to do it. So I let that dry up real well, and then I came back and I tried to finish off what I wanted, that outer edge, like the foundational shapes of that outer edge. I started scraping where the boards like met together. It kind of evened those out a little bit and did a little bit more work getting those the more finished look. And then I took and did a little bit more fire on it and scraped off the burn part. And then I went ahead and added some stain so that when I did scrape the paint off, I'd have a nice even looking base coat that would show through. That would be kind of the same color throughout. Because when I just did this with the fire and the sanding, there was some spots that were really light and some spots that were really dark. It still ended up being not totally consistent, but it's a little bit more consistent than it was, which is what you're going for when you're doing something that's supposed to look rustic. It's okay to have not fully consistent look, right? Because that's what rustic is all about. And here I kind of made the mistake of using this one black glove, which was like rubber on the bottom, but cloth on the top, and I got stain all over my hand. It went through the clothy part of it. So remember that when you're staining something, use full-on rubber gloves. Don't use those little half rubber, half cloth gloves. The stain just soaks right through them, gets all over your fingernails, and then you look like some kind of mechanic with stainy fingers. Not that there's anything wrong with looking like a mechanic, or that mechanics even use stain. They kind of have greasy fingers, but that's a cool look, I guess, for them. It's just a pain, right? When you're trying to go out and look fancy and you have stain all over your fingers. But anyways, the next thing I did, there's nothing wrong with mechanics. I love them. Those guys are awesome. That's all I'm going to say about that. But the next thing I did was starting to make the build-up part for the terrain, the beach part. So I decided I'm going to use like several layers of this stuff and make it like the top layer be a perfect circle, and then gradually kind of change the shape of the beach as it goes out. And I tried that with 3 different layers of this to get the thickness I wanted. I cut those up, and then I glued them on. I brought it in, and I took the plaster and started layering the plaster up. Well, I taped around the outer edge of that to protect the part that I had stained that was going to show through. And I glued all this together, took it in, put the plaster on. I missed the footage on that part, but then once I brought it back out and let it dry, the plaster was like all bubbly in the middle, and I had to tear that off. And I was thinking, oh man, this did not work. And that's this stuff. I shouldn't have tried to use cardboard as a structural thing, but like I said, I didn't know it was cardboard. I thought it was something else. Didn't really work out, but it's always good to make mistakes. Then next time I'm making something where I need to have plaster onto boards, I won't use cardboard as something to build it up. I'll use just straight up boards, or maybe plastic or something else that will not soak up a bunch of moisture and mess up the whole thing and make me have to take it apart. And I wasted all this glue too. I was already running out of glue. I wasted it all on something I couldn't even use. Alright, here we are after this thing is dried up. Kind of started coming apart. I guess a lot of it is about this stuff that I used is kind of in layers. So, kind of came apart. The glue joint stayed on, but the material itself actually just started peeling apart. I'm going to kind of have to go through it and find the parts that are loose. Take those parts off. And kind of figure something else out for a lot of this. I think one thing I'm going to do after I get all the loose parts off is kind of give it a spray paint so that any new material that gets on there, new plaster, it won't soak in and re-wet this and then make it fall apart again. At this point, I was still a little too hopeful. I should have known that this whole thing was going to have to come off of there. It was just, but it's kind of like remodeling a house. When you start tearing something out, you're like, oh, I'm going to just take this one little section of this wall out, and you start taking that one section out, and you find some more water damage, you find some more whatever else you find, and you have to just keep going and take out everything that's bad, everything that's damaged, and then replace it. It just sucks that stuff was bad and damaged on something that I had just worked on, that I just finished, and now I have to redo it all. But that's kind of the way that you learn from remodeling. At this point, I'm still too hopeful, like, oh, I can get this part off and save this stuff underneath. And then I just kept going, kept going. But I'm glad I did because I got it correctly done instead of kind of leaving that falling aparty stuff underneath what should have been full on solid. I don't want to put a bunch of resin on top of something that's already fallen apart. It wouldn't have looked good at all. Wouldn't have worked well. Well, a little bit more of that material came off than I thought might. So I'm thinking instead of the 3 thin layers building up gradually, I'm just going to do one thicker layer of this circle and screw it on, and then just build it up with plaster gradually up to that. Alright, so the one board, circle board, ended up being a much better plan. I was kind of thinking about that originally, but then I thought, oh, it's going to be so much nicer if I can have those 3 layers with the different shapes going out. It'll save me on some plaster. It ended up really wasting more plaster because I had to tear off some of the plaster that I had. I was able to keep some of it on there, and I figured out the plaster installation, the plaster whatever, how putting the plaster on. I figured out a little bit better way to do that. Got my plastering skills down a little bit better using the tool instead of just my fingers. And I did a few layers of that plaster on there and sanding, and I could have drilled the hole back through the middle. And that's basically where the beach was going to be at. You can see I didn't get a full circle. I had left one little part of it flat. I had to plaster up to that to make it a full circle. But I was pretty happy with the outcome, especially when it was kind of tore apart originally. I think I only got the first layer of plastering on video, and then I let that dry, sanded a little bit, plastered some more, let that dry. I think I did that 3 times, maybe 2 or 3 times, maybe even more than that, because I think that bottom edge with the rounded side I kind of had to do a couple more times to get it to the right shape. But I didn't film all of it. I did that kind of throughout this video. I missed little pieces here and there filming, so you don't get to see the whole entire thing. But it was like, even the film that I did have was about 11 hours of footage, so it took over 11 hours, probably 15-20 hours to make this thing, with all the going to the store, like prepping stuff, finding the right boards, setting up the shop, all that stuff. Took a bunch of hours, but I was pretty happy with it. It's a pretty neat tide clock. You won't find another one like it anywhere in the world. At least now you won't. Once people see this video, there's probably going to be thousands of them everywhere. With all the views that I get on my videos, I'm sure this is going to become like probably the biggest craze in tide clocks. I bet you within a week of this video being out, there's going to be a store that sells nothing but these tide clocks. They'll probably call it Tide Clock Central. So I missed filming a tiny bit. I just sanded it up a little bit and put some paint on it to seal it. And I kind of put the paint on in the pattern that it's going to be, I guess, the blue water and the beach. The beach isn't going to be black, but I just put it on there just for fun to see what it looks like, because I was just trying to seal up that plaster, so when I put the next glue and stuff on, it won't just soak all into the plaster. Now I'm going to do the next part, cutting out the back for the works. The next parts of this with the cutting out the back for the the tide clock machinery and adding on the sand and getting that all scraped off and evened out and adding on the beach. And I put the beach all the way down to the bottom because there is beach underneath the water. But that whole part, I'm going to go ahead and put some music on that. I'm sure everybody's getting sick of listening to me talk about my process. It's good to have some variety, some music mixing it up. So I'll probably put on some more rough tet after this while I'm cutting out the back and starting to put on the sand. And maybe I'll just put music on through the rest of it. I might just chime in here and there with a couple little things. But this is some tunes while we finish out this tide clock. Alright, enjoy Rough Tet. Arnold Young, Quinn Wallace, a bunch of cool cats. Alright, probably have to do a little more than that. A little deeper, but I don't have the works out here to check. So I'll check inside and then come back out and do some more.
Alright, the next part is getting the piece ready for the pour, resin pour. And I'm thinking if I just put the resin in there right now and filled it up, it would leak out. Even though I tried to seal it up pretty good around the corners, I feel like it would leak out. Some of those places, lots of the resin people, I've seen them doing projects, it leaks out through those corners. It's not going to be perfect. I've got some areas where it looks like it might leak, but I'm thinking if I pour just a little bit around the corner and let that harden up, then maybe that will like fill in the gaps, and then it'll be hard in there, and then if anything did try to leak the next time, at least that first pour, if it comes through, it's not gonna like mess up the whole thing. It's just gonna be a little leak on a little small bit of resin. So give it a shot. Put just a little bit around the bottom. The final pour is gonna be a lot more level. I'm gonna spend a lot more time leveling it. For this one, I just wanna basically get basic level. We'll just let that dry up. I might do a bead silicone around the edge. You can see, you probably saw it coming out of it. Oh, there's a good one there. One here. This whole side here. This here. So 5 or 6 spots. And it's leaking pretty good. Looks like it's all the way up to the bottom, all the way around. So as long as it doesn't leak anymore, it should be okay. But like I said, I'm gonna probably put silicone around it anyway. Alright, it's freaking hot out here. It was stir sticks already. And gloves. Alright, taking this back inside so it doesn't get too hot. Okay, here's what we got after the first go around with the resin.
It looks like we had a nice, good seal all the way around the edges. I think it's gonna be leak free because the places where it would have leaked, looks like the first layer of resin kind of sealed it up really good. So you can see wherever it did leak, like right here, it leaked out. But on the other side, it's made a nice seal all the way with that resin. Alright, here we go. I'm gonna do right here because this thing doesn't move when I have to pull the car in, and that took about 24 hours to fully harden, and I didn't want it to be sitting out here, get like halfway hardened, and I have to move it up here and then pull the car in. I wanted it to fully harden in one spot. I just don't want to move it around while it's trying to cure. I just want to mention this video is sponsored by Budweiser for making these awesome resin mixing containers. They're really good at making these things. So I just wanted to thank Budweiser for sponsoring this video. Make sure you go buy some Budweiser Zero. There's zero alcohol, but you still need to have an ID. So make sure you're 21 to buy this zero alcohol product. So what I'm trying to do is make a little bit lighter levels of blue for each level up. So the darker blue is on the bottom, and then a little bit lighter each level up. And we'll see how it works. This next one's really light blue. And then to finish it off, it's going to be mostly clear one on the top. Just a little bit of whatever blue is left in the containers, in the mixing container. Especially this fancy new mixing container. First time I've tried them, I really like them. These guys, I don't know why they fill them with this liquid beforehand, but they're quality resin mixing containers. High quality. Right there. I'm really glad that I raised the sides up a little bit. That would have been spilling over, or close to spilling over. But there we go. Next step is going to be letting that dry for a day, maybe more than a day, and then adding on the waves and the top of the water with some glossy Mod Podge and some white paint for the wave white tops.
Alright, next step. Sanding it up, putting some hanger on the back, and then we'll paint the waves on it.
We are coming very close to the end of this video. I know it's a super long one. It's already an hour and 5 minutes long. So my longest video that I've made yet. So if you're still here, thanks for watching. I'm at the point now on this tide clock where I'm finally coloring in the waves as they come in and hit the beach, and they get those little white caps on them. And that was kind of the final piece. I got the texture of the waves by using the high gloss Mod Podge. I've seen other crafter people use some other types of material, some other types of, I don't even remember what it was called, but they had like some high tech water feature thing that they would add onto it. I think that Mod Podge worked pretty good. I had used a little tube and kind of blew it, got some on there and then blew it towards the sand to make it look kind of like it was waves coming in. So now you can see the whole way that this thing looks. It's like the water coming in towards the beach all the way around, like it was a little circle island. And the top part is got a lot more water, which refers to the high tide, and the low part is just got a little bit of water, which is the low tide. So I thought it was a fun idea, a way to make it. It turned out taking a lot of time, probably 20 hours of work making this clock. But it turned out neat, and we got it up in the condo now. And the paint on the sides is the same paint that we used to color the walls in the condo, so it somewhat matches, and the style kind of matches because we got some other the rusticy kind of paint chippy stuff on the table in there, and we got another tide clock in there, so that kind of matches. But it was a fun project. I'm sure if I made another one, I would probably put like a dolphin or a whale in the water, or a shark in the water somewhere, or maybe a few of them. But I can't see myself making another one of these. It took so much time and effort. So thanks everybody for watching. Oh, and the pieces that you didn't get to see, like making this cool little rope tide clock hand. I didn't get to show that part, but that was kind of fun. I just used ropes, kind of the same as I used to go around the thing and to write the high tide and low tide. I didn't think the little black square clock hand that came with it fit the theme, so I wanted to make something else that fit the nautical theme a little bit better. And what better fits the nautical theme than roping line work? Some Marlin Spike seamanship for you there. Alright, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe. I got 117 as of this video, going for 100,000 in a week. I'm sure we'll get there. Bye.